Welcome to the Religious Studies Podcast.
Glad to be here.
This deep dive is generated with AI and verified by Bastian Freiburg. Today, we're looking at, well, a really fascinating moment where ancient religion meets modern global politics.
Absolutely. We're talking about the upcoming papal conclave following the death of Pope Francis on April 21st, 2025.
He had quite a run, 12 years.
A very significant papacy, yes. And this conclave, it's huge, not just for Catholics, but really for anyone interested in how religion and international affairs intersect.
Exactly. So our mission today is to sort of unpack this whole process. What happens, who's involved, what are the potential impacts for the church, for global politics?
And why this centuries-old tradition still grabs so much attention, especially for those of us studying religion.
We've got quite a bit to draw on: news reports on the logistics, analyses of Francis's legacy, the challenges for the next pope.
And some really interesting takes on the whole geopolitical angle of this election.
Okay, so let's start with Pope Francis. The end of his pontificate, he passed away at 88.
Yeah, and his 12 years were definitely marked by some key themes. A big one was his focus on the poor, on social justice. He really championed those causes.
And Laudato Si, his encyclical on the environment. That felt quite groundbreaking.
It really was. Framing environmental stewardship as a core moral issue, that resonated widely, well beyond just religious circles. It's a big part of his legacy, linking faith and ecology so strongly.
Right, and he wasn't just focused outward, was he? He tried to shake things up inside the Vatican, too.
That's a key point. Financial reforms, trying to bring more transparency there, and, of course, tackling the clerical abuse crisis.
Which was, and still is, incredibly difficult.
Incredibly. And our sources show his handling of it definitely drew criticism from different sides. It really highlights the immense challenges leaders face with these deep-seated institutional problems.
Diplomatically, though, he seemed different, more global, less traditionally focused, maybe.
I think that's fair. He definitely broadened the scope. Moved beyond just the usual Western security focus to talk about economic inequality, resource exploitation, climate change, poverty, migration.
Coming from Argentina, the first pope from the Americas, that must have shaped his view.
Undoubtedly. It brought that global South perspective right to the Vatican's forefront. Someone called him a diplomatic ninja in one report.
Well, don't you? Really?
Yeah, citing his role in, the U.S.-Cuba saw and that very tricky deal with China on appointing bishops, things people didn't really expect.
It shows the Vatican's unique kind of power, doesn't it? Not military or economic, but something else.
Exactly. It's that soft power. They have diplomatic ties with over 180 countries, this huge global network. It lets them mediate, act as a moral voice where others maybe can't. It's fascinating for studying non-state actors in international relations.
Okay, so that's the backdrop. Pope Francis's impactful, sometimes controversial, papacy ends, and now we have the conclave. This process itself is ancient.
Deep historical roots, yes. It starts May 7th at the Vatican, and it involves the cardinal electors. That's cardinals under 80.
How many are there now?
Currently 135 eligible, though one Italian cardinal, Becciu, says he won't participate. But here's the really interesting statistic.
Go on.
Pope Francis appointed 108 of those electors. A huge majority.
Wow, 108 out of 135. That's, yeah, significant. Does that basically guarantee a successor in his mold?
Well, not necessarily guaranteed, but it certainly shifts the odds, doesn't it? And these cardinals, they're from all over, 71 countries.
Including 10 from the U.S.
Right. It reflects how the church has grown in Latin America, Africa, Asia. The whole process, though, it's this mix of ancient ritual and, modern high security.
You mean inside the Sistine Chapel?
Exactly. Secret ballots, specific rituals. And apparently they sweep the place for bugs, for listening devices.
Seriously, like a spy movie.
It just shows how seriously they take the secrecy. The cardinals are totally isolated, no phones, no news. They swear an oath of absolute secrecy.
And if they break it?
Excommunication. That's the penalty. The voting itself needs a 2/3 plus 1 majority. They can vote up to 4 times a day.
And that's where the smoke comes in. Black smoke, white smoke.
The iconic signals. Black smoke means no decision yet. They burn the ballots, maybe add some chemicals to make the smoke dark.
And white smoke?
Fumata bianca. That means habemus papam. We have a pope. They burn the ballots cleanly. And since 2005, they also ring the bells of St. Peter's, just to be absolutely sure.
It's funny how these things used to drag on, sometimes for years, but recent ones have been quick.
That's a really good point. Historically, yeah, they could be very long. Political maneuvering, deep divisions. But the last few, John Paul II took 2 days, Benedict XVI, 2 days, Francis just 24 hours, 5 ballots.
Why the change? Better communication beforehand, maybe?
Could be. Or maybe just a clearer consensus emerging among the cardinals about the church's direction. Hard to say for sure.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. This isn't just church business, is it? There are real geopolitical implications here.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at Francis, he really pushed the Vatican onto the world stage on issues beyond the typical power politics. Climate change, inequality, migrants. He made the Vatican a major moral voice on these global challenges.
Which shows how religious institutions can influence things outside the purely spiritual, right?
Definitely. And with all those diplomatic ties, that global network, it's serious soft power. The ability to shape things through moral authority, not force.
So this conclave is kind of a hinge moment, geopolitically speaking.
You could say that. The next Pope's vision could really shift things, global alliances, how we approach big issues.
Our sources mention things like financial security architecture, climate frameworks, even regional security in Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa.
And another key thing, for those of us studying religion and politics, is how the next Pope engages with, say, sanctioned regimes or non-state groups.
Yeah.
Francis was willing to talk to almost anyone, making the Vatican a kind of back channel.
Will his successor continue that? That's a big question.
Exactly. It'll tell us a lot about the Vatican's future diplomatic role.
Which brings us to the potential successors. The papabi, as they call them. Sounds like there's quite a range of possibilities.
There really is. You've got cardinals seen as more reformist, maybe continuing Francis's focus. People like Cardinal Tagle from the Philippines or Peter Turkson from Ghana.
Tagle would keep that focus on the global south, maybe dialogue with Asia.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And Turkson has been involved in justice and peace issues, financial reform. Then you have those often described as more traditionalist.
Like who?
Well, names like Cardinal Parolin, the current Secretary of State from Italy, or Cardinal Erdoğan from Hungary come up.
And they might represent a different approach. More Eurocentric, maybe.
Perhaps. Different stances on things like relations with Russia or migration policies. Parolin offers continuity in administration, but maybe a more traditional European viewpoint.
And there are others too, right? From different regions, different perspectives.
Oh, definitely. Names like Aveline from France, Pizzaballa, the Latin Patriarch in Jerusalem.
Pizzaballa, that's interesting. His perspective on the Middle East must be unique.
Incredibly informed, yes. And Zuppi from Italy. Lots of names circulating.
Yeah.
It really reflects the diversity of the College of Cardinals now.
And it could, as you said, reflect that demographic shift in Catholicism towards Latin America, Africa, Asia. We might see the first non-European pope in centuries.
It's a distinct possibility. The numbers certainly point that way.
So, okay, they vote, the white smoke appears. What happens right then?
It's very ceremonial.
Yeah.
The dean of the cardinals asks the elected man if he accepts. He says, accepto, I accept in Latin. Then he chooses his papal name.
Which is often symbolic, right? Francis choosing that name is a big statement.
A huge statement, connecting him to poverty, simplicity, reform. Then he gets vested in the white papal robes.
And then the big reveal.
Exactly. The cardinal deacon goes out onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica and announces, Habemus Papam. We have a pope.
Goosebumps moment, probably.
For many, yes. And then the new pope emerges, gives his first blessing, Urbi et Orbi, to the city and the world.
It really signals a new chapter, doesn't it? For over 1 billion Catholics, but maybe for the wider world, too.
It really does. A pope's death means reflection, maybe renewal. The new leader shapes so much teachings, outreach, how the church engages with the world.
So looking at this whole conclave, it's clear it's way more than just an internal church election. It's a major global event.
And a fantastic case study for anyone interested in religious studies, seeing this ancient tradition play out with such significant potential global consequences.
It really highlights that connection between religious institutions and international affairs.
And the choice they make, the cardinals.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to send a powerful signal about the direction the Catholic Church sees itself taking on critical world issues, its role in this really complex global landscape.
Absolutely. So for you listening, especially if you're interested in religious studies, it's worth following the news around the conclave. Think about the different cardinals, their backgrounds, what their election might mean.
And maybe reflect on that enduring influence of religious bodies on world events. It prompts a deeper question, perhaps, for you to think about.
Go on.
How does the moral and diplomatic leadership of a huge religious institution like the Catholic Church actually interact with secular governments, with international organizations? How might it influence their actions on these big global challenges?
That's a fascinating question. No easy answers there.
Definitely not, but central to understanding religion's place in the modern world.
It certainly is. Well, if you found this deep dive insightful, please do consider following the Religious Studies podcast.
And maybe give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us reach more listeners who are curious about exploring the world of religion.